You're watching Personal Finance with Coach Kelvin. Let's get into the video. Hey guys, Coach Kelvin here. Now today I want to talk to you about superannuation. Now superannuation is basically like a forced retirement savings account that is here implemented in Australia. So basically how this is structured, it is a closed-ended account that you cannot access until you reach the age of preservation, which is 65 years here in Australia. Now that is open to being changed. Legislation could come out which alters this, but at current state, this is how it works. Now, your employer has an obligation to pay 9.5% of your earnings into this account and if you earn more than $450 per week. Now, this is apparently getting changed right now so that anyone earning any money will have this forced savings put on them. So 9.5% currently, and it's looking like it will increase to 12.5% by the end of 2025. Now, superannuation is basically an amazing investment account on steroids because the entire earnings that you make within that account is taxed at just 15%. So even if you're the highest income earner, any earnings within your superannuation, it's a 15% tax rate. Now, your contributions towards super are made pre-tax. So when you earn your paycheck, let's say pre-tax, you make $1,000 per week, your 9.5% of that, or $95, will then be paid into your superannuation fund from there. After that, the remaining amount, so $905, is what you are then taxed on, okay? So why this is really, really wonderful is you're essentially making a huge tax saving by increasing your contributions into super. Now this works a little more like a Roth IRA, where you are taxed on the way in. For those who are in the US, you are taxed on the way in, but then not on the way out, okay? So if you contact your employer or your payroll officer and you say you want to increase your contributions up to the sacrificed cap of $25,000 per year, taking that $25,000 of pre-tax income out of your income pool will reduce your tax liability by a lot, especially for those in a really high tax bracket paying up to 37 cents on the dollar. The problem with making this contribution, however, is that you can actually build up your retirement funds outside of super within your personal investment accounts, and then your earnings on that may actually be at a more efficient tax rate once you reach retirement. So we're going to discuss sort of how this works now. No matter what, your super investments will only pay a tax rate of 15% on all earnings. Now this includes dividends, any capital gains from rebalancing, buying or selling, etc. It's always going to be 15%. Once you reach the age of preservation, you can transfer all of that money into a pension account and then pay yourself a wage from it essentially. Now, when you reach retirement, here in Australia, an individual is able to earn $18,200 at a tax rate of 0 every single financial year. So that means that if you were earning $18,200 in your investment account external to superannuation, you're going to have a 0% tax liability on those first earnings. Therefore, in this case, it is actually more efficient to not have those funds in super because you're paying a higher tax rate on the superannuation investment earnings. During your work career, however, while you're earning a lot of money, this is not going to be the case. You'll be more efficient with your inside super investments. So when we're talking about reaching FIRE, there is actually a place for super, even though the goal is to retire early. We essentially need enough investment income that we slowly draw down on until the point of crossover where we reach age 65, and then the super kicks in as our funds are depleting. So if you were to look at a graph, like a line graph with this, there will be an absolute crossover point where your investment income stops and your super takes off, okay? Now, how your superannuation fund is so efficient is that the super vehicles you invest through, they often have pre-made funds. So any money that comes into this will just be automatically distributed into the investment option of your choice. So there's often words associated to each investment objective, And this might be extremely aggressive, moderately aggressive, aggressive, conservative, and pretty much cash, so a redundant sort of investment there. Now, you can choose the weightings on your current contributions and future contributions by logging into your online superannuation portal and selecting your investment vehicles that way. It's important to remember, though, that depending on your risk tolerance, you may want to change this throughout your investment journey, especially as you reach closer to that preservation age. Myself, currently as a 28-year-old, I have all my investments in international and Australian equities or in shares, because I don't need any cash or fixed interest investment returns due to the fact that I do not need to retire on this income yet. When, however, I reach 60 years old, then I would make that change in order to preserve some of my capital instead of grow it, because preservation will help balance out the volatility of any sort of insane market decline, but obviously you'll then miss out on some growth. So early on in your investment journey, it is best to be extremely aggressive. Now, my main superannuation account I have through Host Plus, and I have a mix of 70% international equities and 30% Australian equities. Now, with this basically allows me to have all of my investment into shares, meaning I'm likely to get the best return through the growth of those shares. I don't have any fixed income, cash, or property assets, which are a lot more sort of low growth, and there's a lot more liability involved with that. Now, why I really like superannuation is because it is a forced retirement savings that most of the general population will not need to think about, and they will still retire with a generally large amount of money. If you ask people to do this out of their own paycheck, however, it is highly unlikely this would happen, and it would put more strain on the government to provide more pension assistance later down the track. So, if we look at general population having a mean income of about $60,000 per year, okay, the amount that they are going to contribute is just shy of $6,000. And this compounded over a very long time. When we're looking at across a 40-year lifespan, earning an average return of about 8%, this is phenomenal growth. And you're going to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash when you decide to finally transfer that into your pension account and pay yourself basically a livable wage once you reach retirement. Why it is extremely efficient as well is because these forced savings that everyone is getting put in by their employer are automatically divided and rebalanced by the superannuation fund. You don't need to do this yourself. So you very rarely incur those capital gains taxes at the rate of 15% inside super. New contributions just get divided into the appropriate asset classes that you have chosen. And this is why it's efficient. Now, when you are somebody who's perhaps worked in many jobs, okay, it's highly likely that if you did not provide your own superannuation fund to that new employer, they'll simply allocate you their one of choice. So it's important you log onto the Australian Taxation Office website and you check out how many superannuation funds you have, and then whichever one you want to be mostly invested in, or entirely invested in, I should say, log into that website and find the tab which says Consolidate Super. This super fund is then going to go through all of your other superannuation accounts. It's going to contact the person who runs it, or basically withdraw the funds from that and place it into your investment fund in the super fund of your choice. So it's important, you don't want to be bleeding fees across 5 different superannuation funds, because like I spoke about in my fees video, this will absolutely destroy your investment returns over time, especially having small amounts. Your fee ratio is going to be higher across multiple accounts. So let's bring all of those funds into one account and only pay one set of fees, making this far more efficient and allowing a larger pool to grow and compound faster. So what I want you guys to think about is, when you look for a superannuation fund that you want to invest your money into, what has the lowest fees, what over the last 10 to 20 years has had extremely good returns, and are any of these superannuation funds charging a performance fee as well? Because quite often what you'll see is that their returns will say, 9% per annum for the last 10 years. but they may not be including their performance fee on top of that. So by outperforming the index, they then feel entitled to charge you another 1% or something, which may actually bring those returns lower than what the typical index is. I highly recommend that you investigate this and find a fund that suits your investment objective and that you are comfortable having all of your retirement money for the future invested through. I can't tell you which one is the right one to go with, but upon your own research, you may find one that does suit your investment objective. And we're very lucky to have many super funds here in Australia which offer ethical investing. You can do international markets, you can invest in property, in fixed interest, in cash, and you're quite open to choice here. Now, I'm not going to get into a self-managed super fund today, which is basically like a regular brokerage account that you can invest through or do unlisted investments in. The fees are a lot higher, and as a result, there is far more risk. But your superannuation account, wherever you decide to put it, it is very important that you constantly add that money to it because it's going to reduce your tax liability outside of super. And if you're anything like me, you'd probably rather end up with that money at some point than never by paying it to the government. Although taxes do help, maintain roads, provide healthcare, etc., you want to retain as much of your own income as you possibly can. So here in Australia, we have the option to salary sacrifice up to $25,000 of our pre-tax income into super, as I mentioned before. And if you're able to meet this absolute maximum cap, this is going to grow your wealth extremely fast. However, what that means is you'll have less money outside of super to then invest into other vehicles and potentially grow your wealth. So it's important to find a balance which works for you. You want to grow your investment inside super because it's tax concession now, even though it may be more expensive upon retirement. But you want to also make sure that you're growing your outside of super investments to cover that first sort of $18,200 in earnings, where it will be tax-free because it is not within the investment vehicle of superannuation. I can't explain to you guys enough how important it is that you constantly plan for the future, because by having a superannuation fund, we are actually able to, potentially draw down on this later on. If a huge medical expense comes up, you're able to access that for hardships. Any extra contributions you make can be withdrawn using the superannuation first home saver scheme, which allows you to basically take out any extra contributions which you have grown with pre-tax income and only paid a 15% tax upon entry with, grow to basically create a down payment for your first home. This is only relevant for the first home you ever buy. By using it means you're going to pay a lesser tax rate on the money you've earned to save towards your home loan. It also means it's going to grow at a more tax efficient rate, and it's very much well protected. You're not going to dip into your savings, so to speak, because it was in a high interest savings account. You literally can't access it until you apply for that withdrawal to put towards the home loan. So our superannuation fund can really create some opportunities for you, especially if you're a young person making extra contributions early on. This will sort of lessen the burden of your superannuation payments later down the track. Everyone says you need to focus on this when you hit your 50s or your 60s, but if you make a really good punch at it early on in your life and your investment career, this will make things far easier later down the track to meet that maximum amount of 1.7 million you're allowed to have within your super account and not pay any extra increased tax rates. So guys, I want you to think about your superannuation as actually quite an urgent topic that needs covering. You want to make sure that you are growing your retirement funds because you never know what could happen. You may not need to dig into that for emergency or for a first home, and that means you'll have an amazing pool of money for retirement. But if you do need to access it early, thank goodness you had it there, because we do not want to experience those hardships without having the funds available. So that basically concludes this video on superannuation. I look forward to going into other things later on which can help you make the best decisions when it comes to using your superannuation account. And for those who are watching from the United States, this is more like a Roth IRA account than it is your standard IRA or 401k. So you're taxed on the way in, and then your investments grow relatively tax-free, or at 15% here in Australia. and then upon retirement you can access those funds tax-free by putting it into a pension account and drawing down on it, as I mentioned before. If you have any questions, comment below, and if I don't know the answer, I'll do some research and try and find out the answer for you, because this is actually quite a serious topic and you want to be prepared for your future. You don't want to be stressed out when you're 45 thinking, oh my god, there's only 20 years until I retire and I only have, this minimal amount of money in my superannuation account. Let's aim to grow our investments inside and outside superannuation so we are part of that 1% ultra wealthy population. Guys, thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe, and leave a comment if you have any questions, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.